Hello, I'm Dr. Tim Peterson. Welcome to my patient orientation class. We're actually recording this because the information in this class is crucial to you getting the most benefit from chiropractic care in our office, but also to just live a healthier life. So life and health is a full participation event, so definitely participate fully in your care and you'll get the best benefit. So the purpose of today's talk is to really talk about what is health, where does it come from, how to find it when you need it, and how to get the most benefit from your care in our office. It's also important to understand that there's differences in healthcare models, different ways to approach health. Oftentimes people think there's just one way, but really we want to be able to come at it from a lot of different directions. It's important to understand how traumas, stress, toxins, and spinal neglect lead to poor health. You see, chiropractic was never about back pain until insurance companies started covering back pain, and chiropractors said, hey, we do good with that, and they said, okay, you're the back pain doctors. But that's not what chiropractic was all about from the very beginning. Quality information allows you to make quality decisions about your health. In fact, oftentimes you go to the doctor, and while you're talking to them, they're writing the prescription, and then they say, here, try this. But the term doctor means teacher, and there's not much more important to be taught is how to be healthy. And that's why I'm doing this class. But I need your permission, because I might say some things that go against things that your mama told you when you were growing up, or things that you hear on the evening news. So I'm going to tell you how I understand things, and then if we disagree, we can agree to disagree. Fair enough? But why am I even up here talking to you today? Well, for as long as I can remember, I wanted to help people live healthier lives. In fact, I left elementary school knowing I wanted to be a doctor. And my dad was a pharmacist, so we had a lot of friends that were doctors, and my direction was going to be more medical. And then my dad got frustrated after 10 years of being a pharmacist, of seeing people on way too many medications and slaves to poor health. So he left pharmacy and went back to school and became a chiropractor. So early in high school, I remember sitting around the dinner table and hearing stories about my dad's day and different patients he had seen. And there was one patient who came in, Elizabeth, and she said, do you think you can help my son, Alan? He's about 5 years old and he can hardly hear. My dad said, we can check him. And so he checked him, found problems in his spine, and started adjusting him. And there really wasn't much change. And then one day Elizabeth came in and she was crying. My dad said, why are you crying? She said, last night there was a thunderstorm, and Alan woke up and he was crying. And I asked him why he was crying, and he pointed to the roof. He was hearing the rain hitting the roof for the first time. Now, first of all, I was wondering, well, what does chiropractic have to do with hearing? It wasn't until later that I understood that, but I did understand the difference that this was going to make in this child's life and this mother's life from here on forward. And it really changed my life because I got interested in chiropractic. And then something happened my senior year that really stuck with me. I came down with a condition that caused me to have a swollen testicle. And my dad checked my low back and started adjusting me, and the problem went away. Again, I didn't know the connection, I just knew at that point I had to be a chiropractor. And so I changed directions, went to school, became a chiropractor. When I got out, I realized very quickly people didn't have all the information they needed to make the best decisions about their health. So I hate to admit this, but I wasn't bold enough at that time to tell people what they needed to hear. I was more likely to tell you what you wanted to hear, because it's easier that way. But then I had a friend come in under care with a lot of neck pain, and he got better. And then he came in and said, you know what, this is costing me too much, it's taking too much of my time, I'm going to stop care. Well, 2 years later, a photo or a feed popped up on Facebook with him in a neck halo with an oxygen mask on. It said, pray for me, I'm going in for neck surgery. I was like, what didn't he hear that he should have heard? And so this lecture is a result of that, because you need to hear what you need to hear. And I'm not going to let that happen again. So thank you for being here today, and I'm excited for what you're going to learn. I really want to talk first about the current model of health in our society, because there's a predominant model of health that a symptom equals poor health. So if that's the case, then the objective is to relieve the symptoms. But there's a problem with that. If you're judging your health by how you feel, can you be pain-free and symptom-free and still be unhealthy? Well, in your mind, you're probably thinking yes, but I like to use examples. So what about a cavity? Can you necessarily feel a cavity? No, my dentist patients say on average 5 years before you'll feel a cavity. And then by the time you feel it, it's gonna be a root canal or you're gonna lose the tooth, right? Even bigger, the top 3 leading causes of death don't have early symptoms. 70% of all heart disease, a heart attack is the very first symptom of heart disease. You can have stage 4 cancer and not feel anything. So there's a fallacy of saying, well, I feel good, so I must be healthy. Now with that in mind, if we flip the equation, can you have pain and symptoms and it actually be a healthy thing? Again, your mind might be thinking, well, maybe. Well, what if you eat some bad food for lunch and you're throwing up all afternoon long? Are you healthy or sick? Well, you feel sick as a dog, but it's a healthy reaction. The body's doing something to protect itself. In fact, about 10 years ago, there was an E. coli contamination of spinach. Couldn't find spinach on the shelf for months. E. coli is something that your body's gonna limit very aggressively. In other words, it's coming out both ends, right? But 19 people died from this contamination. Well, they all had something in common. They took something to stop the throwing up and the diarrhea. So the toxins built up inside them and they died. So I'm not saying we should like throwing up, but we have to understand our body's doing something very intelligently. Just like fever. We're taught in our society, if you got a fever, you gotta get it down. But is the bacteria or virus creating the fever, or is your body creating the fever? Your body's creating the fever. Why? Well, a fever mobilizes your immune response, creates an environment that the bacteria and virus can't thrive in, and it increases your metabolism. So everything's happening faster in your body. So it's one of your most crucial first lines of defense. We need to stop knee-jerk reaction getting rid of fevers. I mean, if I leaned up against a hot stove right now and I couldn't feel it, and I'm just talking to you for a little bit and we're smelling something cooking, right? Well, how much damage occurs when you don't feel pain that you should be feeling? So again, let's not embrace symptoms and pain and focus on that, but just because you're feeling pain doesn't mean that you're unhealthy. In fact, when we look at definitions of health, not one definition defines health as based on symptoms or how a person feels. In fact, Dorland's Medical Dictionary states that health is a state of physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease and sickness. So health really is about function, optimal function. And you'll probably agree with me that function is variable. Some days I function better than others, that's for sure. But I want you to wrap your mind around a concept, and I'm going to use Billy Joel as an example. Billy Joel is most famous for a song called Piano Man. At this point in his career, he's probably played it thousands of times. But if you put Billy Joel on stage with a Steinway, or with an old beat-up piano missing a few keys, it's going to sound like noise, even though he can play that music beautifully. So Billy Joel's our example of innate intelligence, or our inborn wisdom. Our body's always doing everything it possibly can to get us as healthy as we can be. But it's dependent on the structure of our body, on how well or how much health is expressed. So put Billy Joel on stage with a brand new Steinway piano perfectly in tune, and you don't have to guess. It's going to make beautiful music every time. Now, our innate intelligence isn't a baby plinking around on the piano. It's a grand maestro, much better than even Billy Joel. In fact, health isn't about symptoms. It's about function and the structure of allowing proper function to occur. Health is your birthright. You were designed to be healthy. Now, I think too often we come up with the wrong answers to questions because we ask the wrong questions. And I think a good question to ask is, what limits our body's ability to function properly? Well, in order to explain this properly, we're going to go into some concepts of anatomy, not memorizing a bunch of body parts, but let's figure out what organ is most important in the body. The number one answer I get from my in-class students is the heart. And it's a very good answer, but it's also a wrong answer, because I would say it's the brain. The brain is the only organ entirely encased in bone. So if your body creates a helmet around an organ, probably pretty important. It also controls everything in the body, either directly or indirectly. Everything's under the control of the brain. When you're brain dead, you're legally dead. They can keep your heart pumping for a long time with a machine. But it is also the seat of innate intelligence. Our body's constantly regulating itself to its internal and external environment. If it gets too hot, it has to cool down. If the pH of the blood goes up, then it has to bring it down. That innate intelligence is always working to regulate all 37 trillion cells in the body into a fully functioning, living human being. It's an amazing process, and the brain coordinates all of that. Now, the second most important organ in the body is based on the fact that the brain is pointless if it's not connected to the body. So the spinal cord connects the brain and the body together. It is almost entirely encased in bone. In fact, if we look at this guy, the only way to make this thing more encased in bone would be to make it one bone, and then you wouldn't be able to bend over to even tie your shoes. So what you have is 24 bones stacked on top of another. You have 7 neck bones called cervical vertebra, 12 thoracic or mid-back vertebra, 5 lumbar or low back vertebra, a large tailbone called a sacrum, and a small tailbone called a coccyx. From front to back, it should be straight up and down. From the side, you should have a curve to the front in the neck, curve to the back in the middle, and a curve to the front in the low back. As long as everything's lined up and moving properly, the messages from the brain down the spinal cord and out to the body will get through without interference, and you have a potential for optimum health. Now, I want to be clear. I didn't say that if we get your spine functioning perfectly, you're going to be perfectly healthy. You have a potential for optimum health. There's lots of things that go into health. You got to eat right, exercise, drink plenty of water, get rest, keep stress down. But this is one of the most neglected areas of our body, because out of sight, out of mind. Another area of confusion in the spine is the discs. Those are the shock absorbers in between the vertebra. If we want to kind of get a real look at what it looks like, this is a disc. It has a firm cartilage outer and a soft jelly-like inner. In fact, if you look at it like this, like it's a water balloon that you're squeezing between your hand, it should just bulge slightly around the hole outside. But if you put uneven pressure on it, now it's going to bulge, and it generally bulges back onto these nerves. That's why it can be so miserable if you have a bulging disc. Chiropractors have great success with problems like this because we can get the vertebra into a better position, get it moving properly again, and allow that disc to heal over time. The problem really gets worse if the disc actually ruptures and that jelly center actually comes out. That's going to be more likely a surgery. Even though I have helped cases like that, it's always more touch and go. So we always want to get to this as soon as possible. And what causes the spine to go out of alignment and potentially cause disc problems or pinched nerves? Well, how many of y'all were kids, right? When you're growing up as a child, falling off of bikes and swings, doing different sports where you slide into second base and do the scorpion, you get a lot of damage as a child. The thing is, as a child, you just kind of pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go on and play again. And with that in mind, if it heals wrong, then it grows wrong. And it ends up showing up when you're an adult, and you're wondering, why did when I bend over to pick up a piece of paper, did my back go out? Well, a lot of it came from here. In fact, one of the most common causes of these misalignments is the birth process. In the normal birth process, they found that the average obstetrician is 170 pounds, the average baby is 7 pounds, and the average pull on a baby's neck is 70 to 90 pounds of pressure. So that means that in a normal childbirth, the baby's being pulled by the neck, turned 180 degrees to get the shoulders presenting, pulled up to get one shoulder out, pulled down to get the other shoulder out, and then you're born. We have so many babies that have colic, where they're crying for hours on end for no reason. We have babies that have ear infections every month of their life for the first 12 months, and then they get tubes in their ears. These things are not normal. In fact, I had a baby that was brought in at 1 month old with colic, just all rigid and agitated, and we found a misalignment up at the top of the spine, adjusted it, and he just went, oh, and just relaxed. We love adjusting babies. We love adjusting kids because they respond so quickly. Unfortunately, most people don't get adjusted as kids. So, what happens when you're an adult? Well, you're not made of rubber anymore when you fall. So slips and falls, repetitive activities, technology nowadays is killing us with our forward head posture. Bumping our heads, just being careless, being sedentary all week long and then going out and doing a bunch of crazy work on the weekends. As adults, we do multiple things day in and day out that can damage our spine. And then you add in obvious things like car accidents. If you wrap your car around a tree, it makes sense that it's going to damage the spine. But even low-speed impacts can be dangerous. The research shows impacts as low as 4 miles an hour can cause damage to the spine. But what you get is delayed effects. What I mean is, you're injured in a car wreck, but it's below the pain threshold, so it's now weakened. You don't feel symptoms, so now you're out in the yard throwing mulch or whatever, and all of a sudden your spine starts hurting. And you come in to see me, and I say, have you been in an auto accident? You say, yeah, a couple months ago, but I wasn't injured. Well, you were injured, you just didn't know it. And then you add in different toxins and stresses that cause our spines to blow fuses, and now you have just a litany of things that can cause these misalignments or subluxations. But we're always looking for the one thing. But it's really accumulation over a lifetime that get you in the condition that you're in right now. So don't look for the one thing. Look for the lifestyle that got you here. And so I like to use a very drastic example at this point. It's Christopher Reeves. Most of you will know that Christopher Reeves was the actor that played Superman in the movies, and he was in great condition, but one day he was out jumping horses. The horse stopped, he fell forward, hit his head, broke his neck. It's an upper cervical fracture called a hangman's fracture. Just by the name of that fracture, you should know that you generally don't survive those. In fact, the only reason he survived is they had EMS on hand at the event, so they could get on a respirator immediately because he couldn't breathe on his own. He was obviously paralyzed from the neck down. They had to put a pacemaker in to get his heart beating on rhythm. They had to just press on his bowels to get his bowels moving. But did Christopher Reeve have junk organs? Or did he just have, I guess, what we would call a blackout? Power wasn't going from the brain to the body. Now, none of you sitting out there have that drastic of that problem. You're more like what's going on with this lamp right here. This lamp is a dim light bulb. Now, I didn't just call you a dim light bulb. But if the light given off by this lamp represents your health, your level of health, everyone is dimmer than what they should be. Well, let's just use an example. You come into our office with back pain, so you're a dim light bulb as far as your health is concerned. And we see these problems, and we start taking care of you, and it starts getting brighter. And someday you come in and go, you know what? My back pain's gone. I feel so much better. Thank you, doc. Well, my brain always says, well, how much brighter can you be? And so we keep adjusting you. It's getting brighter and brighter. You come in and go, you know what? I started running again. I'm going to run a 10K. Or I can get on the floor with my grandkids and get up again without any problem. Then we're really going to celebrate, because we always celebrate you feeling good. We want you to feel good. But even more, we want you to be able to function and do the things that you want to do. So that over time, you're shining brighter and brighter and brighter, and you're able to fulfill being who you're supposed to be. In fact, we had a 78-year-old patient who got healthy enough to go on down to Haiti on a mission trip to educate kids. If you're shining bright like this, you can serve your family better, you can serve your community better, you can serve God better. This is why we do what we do. Now, if you just get bright like this and then let it go, does it stay bright? Or does it start coming back down? Anything that you do to be healthy has to be sustained. And so we want you to be bright like this for the rest of your life, not just feeling good for the short term. Now, too often, it's like we're going through the drive-thru at McDonald's. Not that we should be going through the drive-thru at McDonald's. I'm going to go and turn the light on here. But if you go through the drive-thru and you're speaking to this little tinny speaker, you say, I want a quarter pounder with cheese and a large fries, and they say back to you, well, do you think you're going to get what you just ordered? The message isn't getting through. You're probably going to get a chocolate shake and a fillet of fish. So we need to make sure the message gets through. Because when we look at where the nerves go, They go everywhere. The nerves come off the brain, down the spinal cord, down your legs, down your arms. They allow you to move, they allow you to feel things, but only 10% of the nerves in the body can feel pain. The vast majority of nerves go to the autonomic nervous system. You can call it the automatic nervous system. Those are the nerves that go off to your organs. They're the nerves that control your immune system. They're the nerves that control your hormones. And so that's why when I told you that I had a swollen testicle and my dad looked at my low back, it's because he knew that where the connection went. So I always think back and I'm like, well, what if I had waited until I was like 30 or 40 years old to get adjusted? Could I have been sterile? I don't know. But the good news is I had 3 beautiful daughters. 3 beautiful daughters that got to get adjusted when they were babies. When they were still in the hospital, they were getting adjusted, and they've grown up to be healthy, vibrant young ladies. And that's what I want for you and your family. Now, subluxation is what I've been talking about. Subluxation is when a vertebra shifts out of position and it's putting pressure on a nerve. It causes some very obvious things like pain and tenderness, inflammation or swelling, tight muscles, locked joints or reduced motion, and even abnormal posture or abnormal heat patterns, which we check in the office. One thing our patients start noticing when they walk around the grocery stores is they'll notice the person in front of them with the low shoulder, or that person that's sitting at their desk and they have that forward head posture going on. It starts to be a lot more obvious when we start knowing all the signs of subluxation. But Dr. Chung-Ha Soo said, he's a spinal cord expert at the University of Colorado, and he says that just the weight of a dime on a spinal nerve will reduce nerve transmission by as much as 60%. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want 60% less nerve function than I'm supposed to have. The Journal of the American Medical Association says that deviations in your body's center of gravity lead to poor health, decreased quality of life, and a shortened lifespan. So even within medicine, they're recognizing that this structural deficiency can be devastating to your health. But as chiropractors, we get frustrated because, well, there's 4 main frustrations. In fact, number 1 is people put off getting problems checked. Now, I know, I don't like going to the doctor either, and I'm busy, but if you have a small problem, we know what happens, right? Let's say you see this discoloration in the roof, and you're like, oh, I'm really busy right now, I'll get to that in a few weeks. Well, if you wait long enough, it's gonna be breakfast in the rain, right? The little problem becomes a big problem. Now the roofer comes over and says, hey, there was this pinhole leak in the roof. I could have patched it for a couple $100, but now you need a new roof, new ceiling, new insulation, and it's gonna be about $10,000. That's why the 5 most dangerous words in the world are maybe it'll go away. I did have a patient in my class once that said that he went to his doctor, and his doctor said, oh, you're just getting old, you have to get used to it. So I thought that was normal. But common sense and reality is that something only goes away when what's causing it goes away. So shouldn't we be looking for the cause? Our second frustration is we tend to cover up the problem. In fact, some of these companies spend millions of dollars every year telling us to cover up these problems. But would it make sense if your smoke detector was blaring in the middle of the night that you would just stumble out of bed, take out the battery, and go back to bed? It doesn't make sense. You need to get up and go look for the fire and take care of the fire. What if your oil light went on in your car? Would it be smart to just pull out a piece of duct tape, slap it on there, and keep on driving? You know how much damage will accumulate just driving an extra mile or 2 with no oil in your car? Well, some of us are living our lives with a spine that's deteriorating for years and years and years, and just keep covering it up with an Advil or a Tylenol. We need to stop covering up the problem and actually look for the cause. Our third frustration is people missing appointments. I mean, we understand, again, we have busy lives, and there's a method to, there's a reason why we do what we do the way that we do it, because our body heals in rhythm. And so if we start getting off pattern of our corrective care plan, then we're not going to get the results that we need. It's kind of like we're making a cake, right? If I'm making this cake, there's a certain list of ingredients that need to be in that cake, and we have to put them in at the right timing. And so if I just take half the ingredients, put them in the cake, stir it up, set it aside for 12 hours, go to work, come back and finish making the cake, am I gonna get this cake or am I gonna get this cake? It might resemble what we were aiming for, but it's not gonna be nowhere near as tasty or as pretty. And so when we are working on your spine, we understand as far as maybe having to bend. Let's say you have a Monday morning appointment scheduled and you can't make it. Always call. Call us and say, hey, I can't make it to my appointment this morning. Can you make it this afternoon? Great, we'll move you. Or if you're scheduled for the afternoon and you can come in the morning, fantastic. But communication is key. Sometimes you might say, you know what, I can't make it at all today. Can I be here tomorrow? Absolutely. Here's where the problem comes in. You're scheduled for Monday. Hey, I can't make it today. I'll see you at my next appointment on Thursday. Well, you already had an appointment on Thursday. Now you've missed an appointment and you're gonna start losing momentum and sliding backwards. That's when Deborah or Ann are gonna say, you know what, I'm not allowed to change the doctor's prescription. Let me see what he wants to do. I might let you to do that once, but then you're gonna be making it up the next week so we can get back on track as quickly as possible and not sacrifice your health for some speed bump in your schedule. So commit to your health, we'll commit to you, and we'll keep moving forward. And then the final frustration is we're in the hurry up culture. Everybody wants it now. But we have to follow the rule of time. The 90-day healing principle can't be ignored. You can't rush nature any more than you can have a healthy baby in 5 months. The fact is, the health that you're living right now is based on things that you've already done and things that have already happened to you. There's nothing you can do today to be healthy today. Now that's the bad news. Here's the good news. There's lots that you can do today to be healthy down the road, a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now. So it's crucial to take the long view. And so maybe an example to kind of wrap your head around this is if you break your arm, right? If you break your arm, the first thing they're gonna do is set it back in place. Then they're gonna put it in a cast, they're gonna immobilize it. It might even stop hurting after the first week, but is that when you get your cast off? Absolutely not. About 6 weeks in the cast, now you get the cast off, now it's a weak, scraggly arm, you gotta get strong again, so about 6 weeks of rehabilitation. So that's about that 90-day process. We can't rush it any more than that. But when we look at principles for a healthier life, it all starts at conception. The first system to develop as you're developing as a baby is the nervous system. It's a primitive brain and spinal cord called a notochord. It controls the formation of all the cells in the body. It turns into the central nervous system and controls the growth and development of the fetus from 1 cell to 37 trillion cells. And then you're born and the nervous system doesn't miss a beat. It controls every process in your body from your first breath until your last. Now, some more good news. Most of what it does, you don't have to think about. You've been sitting here watching this video for about, I don't know, 35, 40 minutes now, and you haven't had to decide whether you were gonna breathe or not, or whether your heart was gonna beat. Most of what it does is automatic. One of the most important things that the nervous system controls is the healing process. You see, your body is in a constant state of cell replication. In other words, 100 million cells die every second of your life and have to be repaired or replaced. The nervous system controls that process. So, every 7 years you get a whole new body. So if you don't like your body, wait 7 years, it'll be brand new, right? But what if there's interference with the nervous system over those 7 years? Are you gonna be healthier 7 years from now or sicker? It'll be sicker. Now, the Journal of Neurological Science backs this up. They say that the quality of healing is directly proportional to the functional capability of the nervous system to send and receive nerve messages. The messages have to go back and forth, uninterrupted. But if we rely on our healthcare system, which is the most extensive healthcare system in the world, we have the most doctors, best medical schools, top hospitals, most advanced technology and equipment, we're #1 in the world for emergency trauma crisis care. It's amazing the lives that modern medicine can save. But that type of care is only 1% of healthcare. The other 99% of healthcare, we're 79th out of 81 countries. Why is that? Well, most of medical care is focused on medicine, which relies on pharmaceuticals, or the symptom relief model that we talked about in the very beginning. Now, do you think there's a profit incentive for them to sell you those drugs? Well, 80% of their budget is spent on marketing, so that's got to tell you something. As Americans, we spent $300 billion on drugs last year. The combined profits of the top 10 Fortune 500 pharmaceutical companies was $36 billion. I would not begrudge them that if we were one or two in the world, but we're 79th out of 81 countries, and we're spending $2.7 trillion on healthcare every year. So, is it your health or the stock value? Right. Now, another question I get is, well, does my insurance pay for this? And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, is an insurance company responsible for your health? Well, I've never seen anybody want to get into an auto accident because they wanted to use their insurance. Or I've never seen anybody want their house to blow away in a tornado because they wanted to use their homeowner's insurance. Health insurance is for sick emergency care, not to keep you healthy. In fact, it seems like we try to get our money's worth out of our health insurance because it costs so much and you feel like you need something out of it. But I would love for you to be so healthy that you never have to use your health insurance. And then even when we check on people's insurance in our office, when we call, these are the guidelines that they operate under. It's called the Medicare Guidelines, and it says a treatment plan that seeks to prevent disease, promote health, and prolong and enhance the quality of life, or therapy that's performed to maintain or prevent deterioration of a chronic condition is deemed not medically necessary. So it's not about your health. And even when they're supposed to pay, it's a roll of the dice on whether they're going to or not. So we need to take responsibility for our own health. And the purpose of chiropractic in this office is to remove interference, allow for proper nervous system communication with the body, which allows for proper cell replication and healing, which allows for proper function, which leads to health. Now, people say, well, as I get older, aren't I supposed to just kind of degenerate and decay? Well, this patient came in back in 1990, had a small bone spur right here. But after coming in for a little while, he felt better and he left, and he came back in 17 years later, not having any chiropractic care. And so this is what his spine looked like 17 years later. The disc is much thinner and a much larger bone spur, so it got much worse. Now people would say, well, he's older, he's aged. Well, this patient came in back in 1984 with a small bone spur right about around the same level. But she was adjusted regularly for 22 years, took an x-ray 22 years later, and that disc space never got any narrower and the bone spur never got any worse. Now, that's my mom, so I know she was under chiropractic care. But the idea is degenerative disc disease doesn't get worse if you get the vertebra moving properly and in a better position. You can actually stop that whole process. We have a patient, Terry Lockie. She came in with a lot of back pain. In fact, my dad, she works at my dad's medical doctor's office, and one day he saw her walking and he said, how long have you had back pain? She's like, how'd you know? It was that obvious by the way she was walking. And so when she came in, this is what we saw in her spine. We saw a spine curving off to the right, back to the left, back to the right. It was about 13 millimeters shifted to the side. She started coming in, getting adjusted, started feeling better, but after the first month we did another x-ray and found that instead of curving off to the right 13 millimeters, it was only 1.5 millimeters off. And then it curved back to the left slightly and was about 4 millimeters off. So how do you think that's going to carry her through the rest of her life if she maintains it? Much, much better. She won't be walking around like that. She'll be walking around in comfort, able to move, able to function, do the things that she was designed to do. Juan Ramirez came in because he had a bucket list trip to Spain planned for 2 weeks in the future, and he had excruciating sciatic pain down his leg. When I looked at his x-ray, you see bone spurs all throughout this low back area, but you also see L5 shifted forward on the sacrum, that large tailbone, 11.5 millimeters. Started adjusted him every day until he left for Spain. And then when he got back from Spain a couple weeks later, he said, I was able to walk all over Spain without any problems. And we took an x-ray a couple weeks later and found that Instead of being shifted forward 11.5 millimeters, it was under 8 millimeters forward. Now, that's never going to be perfect, but if he keeps this up, do you think he'll be able to go on a lot more bucket list trips? I believe so. Lauren Chambers came in. She had actually brought her kids in because they had ear infections, and then she thought, well, maybe I should get checked. She didn't have any symptoms, but when we looked at her spine, we saw a neck that was twisted to the right at the bottom, kinked going off to the left about 10 millimeters. She had about an 18-degree curve in her mid-back. We started adjusting her. She immediately started actually feeling a lot of mid-back pain. And she's like, I came in without any pain, why am I hurting now? Well, we were getting things moving. In fact, that pain went away very quickly, but now that neck was not twisted at the bottom, and it was still going off to the left, but only 6 millimeters instead of 10. And that 18-degree curve had turned into a 14-degree curve. So now she has no symptoms, but also a healthier spine. Shelby was 3 years old and hadn't gone number 2 in 8 days. They had gone the medical route with all these different medications and stuff, and nothing was helping her. And Grandma said, hey, why don't you go see Dr. Peterson? So she came in, we actually got an x-ray of her. We saw that her spine was wedged, kinked going off to the left. Now, we already know that the nerves in that low back come off and go to the bowel. And the bowel, in order to work, has to push the material through so it can exit the other side. When we adjusted her, she came in the next day and went through our reception area and said, hey, I went poopy. It was ginormous. So kids, like I said, respond so quickly to care. And in fact, when we took the re-x-ray, it had even overcompensated to the right slightly. But it's fun to take care of this at 3 rather than when they're 30 and they've had it for 27 years. Now, shortly after that first month was over, her mom stopped bringing her in. Now, she's several years older. I haven't heard what condition she's in, but problems don't just stay the same. And I just hope she doesn't wait too long before she brings her back in again. Now, Carolyn Smith didn't start chiropractic care as a kid. In fact, she was 77 when she started care. She came in thinking that she was gonna have to stop driving because she could hardly move her neck anymore. When we looked at her neck, it was going way off to the left. But within the first week of starting care, she was able to move her neck. She was so excited, and she drives about 30 minutes to get here. And she volunteers all over town, and very active lady. And so down the road, we ended up seeing her neck go almost to the midline, which was fantastic. But my favorite part is so this is 10 years ago. Wow, she's 87 years old right now, and she's the one that drives her younger friends to their doctor's appointment. Maria Barra was a housewife that could hardly do anything around the house. She couldn't even load the dishwasher. When we looked at her neck, she had so much pain in her neck, but it was straight. C4 was shoved in front of C5, and C5-6 is fused together. That's never gonna change. But we started adjusting her. She started feeling better. In fact, her husband came in with her once and said, you know what, I'm starting to get my wife back. And when we took her re-x-ray, that neck is supposed to be a nice curve. We saw a beautiful curve come out of that neck that was so messed up before. And so again, if you maintain something like that for a lifetime, you don't have to get old as you get older. Now, I talked about that curve, right? Well, the Journal of the American Geriatric Society says that a loss of the normal neck curve can take up to 15 years off of your life. Why is that? Well, this is an MRI of 2 necks. An MRI is like a cross section, like I cut off your head and look down your neck. And when we look at it like that, it should be nice and well-rounded. This is a neck that has the normal curve. This is a neck that's lost that normal curve. When it does this, it literally stretches and flattens out the spinal cord. So the messages can't get through there the way that they should be. So I think you'd rather have this neck rather than this neck. And that's why Maria Barra came around so well in her improvement. Now, my last example, Jessica, her husband Danny worked at Acuity Hospital. He was head of nursing. And we did a spinal screening out there, did a lecture, and at the end of the day, he said, do you think you can help my wife Jessica? She's miserable with fibromyalgia. I said, let's check her. And so she came in, she actually had to have a friend drive her because she couldn't even drive. She had a 1-year-old baby that she couldn't even carry, so her friend was carrying her. But this is her first day in her office. She doesn't look happy to be here. In fact, later on, she told me the only reason she was here is because her husband told her that he had made the appointment. She was just trying to live up to that obligation. And so we found subluxation in her spine and started adjusting her, and I saw her start to drive herself to the office, start to carry her 1-year-old. And then at the end of her first year of care, she was writing out her progress report before we did her exam. And she wrote that she had gotten off all 17 medications that she had been on. And we were thinking, well, that'd make a great story. So she wrote her story. It was so good. We did a video testimony. It's actually on our website, petersonchiropractic.org. And this is just a picture from the video. She's a different person. In fact, so much so that shortly after this video, she injured her knee doing the limbo with her kids. So the public service announcement here is, if you're over 20 years old, no matter how good you feel, no limbo. But all 3 of her kids also came in, and they're still coming in. And Layla, the 1-year-old, was on the verge of tubes in her ears. And in 7 years, she's had 0 ear infections. Jacob was in preschool. He had asthma so bad he had been to the emergency room multiple times. And in the 7 years that we've been seeing him, he's had 1 asthma attack. And they brought him in, he got adjusted, and was good to go. So it's exciting to see someone's life changed, but it's even more exciting to see an entire family's life changed. And so if you're watching this from clicking on the link that we gave you at the office, we also gave you a form. The form you should have been filling out all along, but down at the bottom there's 5 blanks that give you the opportunity to give up to 5 people a checkup, consultation, exam, and x-rays that normally costs $265 for just $20. And so we would be happy to give you a gift certificate for each of the people that you put on this. You might even know some people in some other location, maybe in Minnesota, that needs a chiropractor. Write their name down too, write where they're from, and we'll see if we can find a chiropractor for them. But if they're from around here, we'd be more than happy to check them. And so we also do lectures out in the community. And so at the very bottom of this, if you have any places that have instructors come out for guest speaking, any different organizations, let us know, and we'll contact them and find out if they'll have us come out. We like to talk about stress and how it affects the body. So it's a great opportunity to bring health out into the community. And then the second page that you got was back care instructions. We can discuss this in person, but I would just recommend doing as much of this as you can, because the decisions that you make today determine whether as you get older, you're in the nursing home or on the cruise ship. And I really want you to be on the cruise ship. And thank you for watching this, and have a wonderful day.